Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hello, Stu. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Yourself?
Well, I'm stunned at the fresh-faced, fresh young boy look. For anybody that's looking at these in sequence, mate, you've lost the beard. What's going on? What's going on? Got yourself a new date?
No, not quite. It was getting so long, I thought, right, it's got to go. And I'm a bit lazy, really. It's not because beards are in fashion. It's more I'm so lazy I can't be bothered to shave that it got that long. So I thought, yeah, I'm away for the...
That's like the Eddie Izzard sort of fashion circle, isn't it? Because there's a kind of point, and he goes around this circle and he says, you're in fashion, and then there's a point where you're just not
That's
in
exactly
fashion.
right.
I do that with colour about every 10 years because I like purpley colours. And so about every 10 years, I'm absolutely on point. And then the rest of the time, the other 9.8 years, I'm not at all. And if it's brown or taupe, forget it. I think it's taupe. What about taupe? Anyway, does anyone care? So what were we going to talk about? We were going to talk today, Stu, or in this chat, about conveyancing delays, sort of specifically post-lockdown, really. Yeah. You suggested conveyancing delays, and it suddenly occurred to me that I've not had any locum work for the last 6 months for obvious reasons, because no solicitors and conveyancers have been taking hollybobs, and now lots of them are. And what I've noticed sort of coming back into conveyancing work after a few months away, Stu, is, well, clearly, as you've had all along, just how stressful it is. But clients' expectations haven't changed, and they haven't seemed to realise that the entire world has been affected by a global pandemic. So if a major lender, has a service centre or a call centre in another country, well, they're just as likely to have been affected by the pandemic as us, if not more so. And whilst I've got no great love for the lenders, their staff will have been just as affected by all this as us. And certainly I've noticed, a real logjam as far as lenders are concerned. So, as I say, in our sort of slightly post-lockdown world, Stu, what are you noticing as some of the real bottlenecks for conveyancing at the moment?
I think first of all, one point to focus on is the client's expectation. And rightly or wrongly, I would say that it's actually increased. I think where maybe people could be sitting at home, they could be furloughed, that kind of thing. The one thing that they have to concentrate and think about are their property. On top of that, a lot of clients want to get things done, want to get it completed out of the way because of concerns they might have about further lockdown, that kind of thing. So I think expectations are really high at the moment, and where bricks and mortar has been the safest thing for them over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, it's really important to them. So clients' expectations are difficult to manage in this era.
Yeah,
it's not just lenders; it's everybody within the industry at the moment that's under significant pressure due to numbers that are far way and above what we could have expected. When the lockdown occurred, we never thought the market would come back as strongly and as quickly. And I think it's caught everybody in the industry probably by surprise. So trying to deal with that is very difficult. And of course, most clients do buy with a mortgage, and dealing with mortgage lenders in this climate is horrific. There's no way of really buttering it up, I'm afraid. And I know we're going to give the lenders a hard time, but to put it in context, how many times have we all got on the phone and been holding for 45 minutes, an hour to then be cut off? That is an everyday occurrence across the office. Every single day, every single person will be holding for banks, trying to sort out getting monies in, that kind of thing. And it's so important as well. We send off this order form. We don't really get any kind of acknowledgement from the banks that, yes, we're going to send monies on completion, that kind of thing. So we must check that the banks...
Yeah, I've really noticed too, actually, on the lender front, a number of files. And obviously, as a locum, I come in, completely fresh to every single file. And I do make a point, actually, if something's been reported to a lender, as we very often have to do on files these days, I do make a point of sort of tracking the the correspondence with the lender through, just to make
Yeah.
sure that all those boxes have been ticked. That's one of the big risk management things I focus on. But what I've noticed on more than one file, interestingly, one in particular around the dreaded old variation of a lease for ground rent, is that a particular lender, and I'll spare their blushes and won't name them, but they sort of give an answer on a point that's not particularly clear, or that raises another question. The firm then goes back for clarification or another point, and then the lender comes back with an additional requirement. So there it's real shifting sands, Stu. I'm finding that you think you've got them. It's like nailing jelly to the wall. You think you've got go ahead, and then suddenly they've added another criteria, and of course everybody in the chain is then getting very stressed. The agent's on the phone all the time, the mortgage advisor is on the phone all the time, the client obviously, and it's really hard to say, well, lender wants something else, because it always comes back to us, that point that keeps recurring. I mean, am I just unlucky with that on my file, Stu, or is that
that's exactly the scenario we have. And just to put it into context for the non-lawyers that are watching this, as a law firm, you have to apply to the bank to go on their panel, which is a difficult process as it is. And if you're deemed not to carry out certain standards when you're acting for the banks, you get chucked off the panel. So we have to adhere by their criteria. We have to do what they say. In addition to that, when we act for a client buy-in, we most of the time also act for the lender. So the lender becomes our client as well. So we have to take instructions from them. If they say jump, we have to jump. So that's why we bang on about lenders and how important they are in the process. And yet you're exactly right. It's so annoying. They could have asked 2 questions at the time they raised, the first one. They don't often work like that. And the other annoying thing about the banks is you can rarely speak to the people who are actually dealing with it, the underwriters. Normally they're a protected species that we're not allowed to get involved in. So it's really, really difficult, and it's something that obviously you have to get right. If there was a problem, not receiving a client's mortgage advance, that the implications would be so horrific that it's something you can't unfortunately skirt around.
No, you're absolutely right, Stu. And as I say, that's that sort of dialogue with the lenders. Everything now obviously has to be reduced in writing. I have to say, as a general observation, I still find, and I hate to say this, but dealing with sort of smaller local lenders, quite often smaller local building societies, generally speaking, an absolute joy. One of them in particular, as you said, Julie in underwriting. Lovely lady in one of them. She's just an absolute joy. You give her a tinkle, say, hello, Julie, I've got this problem, on this file. Can we deal with it or can't we? She says, yes, Lorraine, we can, or no, Lorraine, we can't. Within a matter of hours, I've got the letter saying yay or nay, and off we go. Now, I know any big lender watching this is going to be shouting at the screen saying, yes, but they're not, they're probably not a multi-squillion pound business. Well, maybe being able to offer, decent customer service is still a thing. But actually, on the issue of sort of lockdown delays, Stu, we've said before in our Conveyancing Matters chats that quite often, it's the conveyancers themselves that come in for a bit of stick. But clearly, firms adapting to the market that we're in has been very difficult. Some have closed down completely. Some, put the out of office on and aren't going to come back until everything looks like normal if they've got a business to come back to. Others pivoted quite quickly to online working and remote working at home. But even that, there has still been quite a lot of issues for firms to manage. How have you found that?
Oh, it's been incredibly difficult. It really has been difficult. We've had lots of staff that were initially furloughed. They've now been brought back. And it's the numbers that the problem. We've gone from a high on coming away from Brexit to an incredible low with the virus hitting, obviously. And it was virtually a complete standstill. It was like somebody switching a light off. And of course, it's now somebody switched the light back on. So reacting to it is very difficult. And of course, there's lots of different sort of laws about employing staff and things like that we have to be mindful of. So everything has to be done the right way. So it has been difficult. But I must stress, it's not just the difficulty of us adjusting to sort of COVID restrictions. You know, we're not seeing clients in the office at the moment still. You know, we're trying to sort of adhere to 2 metre rulings, things like that. It's not just that side of it which is difficult. It's the, you know, the dealings. You know, we deal with multiple entities on a conveyancing transaction, which range from management companies to search companies, mortgage lenders, the land registry, the inland revenue, could be residents associations, local authorities, all sorts of different people. Of course, every single one of them have these problems, the constraints that they're working under, their delays. You know, only you know, last week we had multiple cases where we just couldn't get a surveyor instructed, and you know, it's purely because the workloads that they're all trying to operate at the moment. So everything has a big knock-on effect. You know, we've got multiple clients that are looking to either remortgage or sell, where their purchase from 6 months ago still hasn't been registered at the land registry. So
it's an issue.
There are delays across the board, and of course it all snowballs and it all ramps up into you know, a big problem for us.
Well, actually, I mean, that sort of arcs back to where you started, really, Stu, about client expectation, because of course, you know, I've always tried, you know, when I'm teaching this stuff to people, to remind anybody who's going to be delivering conveyancing services, they have to remember that we maybe have, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80 files at a time to deal with, if not more. But of course, by definition, the only transaction each individual client is interested in is their transaction.
Quite rightly too, you know, quite rightly too. You know,
exactly,
clients should
we mustn't forget that.
Yeah, no, we mustn't forget that. We must always think, you know, poor us, poor us, poor us. You've got to, you know, step outside the bubble sometimes. And the clients, you know, are buying the house of their dreams. They're looking to undertake the biggest transaction that they've ever undertaken. You know, quite rightly that they would have expectations that they would expect us to adhere to. So I think there's nothing wrong with clients having expectations. It's not something that sort of overly bothers me. I think they should have, and we really want to perform and meet those expectations. But it just is incredibly difficult at the moment. And I think
also what conveyancers, and again, I'm sure we touched on this before, so I won't spend too long on it, but again, it's that age-old management cliche, isn't it? It's managing clients' expectations. You know, I do think if, you know, we're experiencing some difficulties or whatever, it's that old sort of, you know, under promise and over deliver thing. You know, make it clear to clients what's achievable and what isn't. But certainly what I'm noticing, Stu, in terms, and this must be impacting on firms, as I say, as a locum, you know, that's one of the things I do, not the only thing, thank goodness. You know, I've done nothing for 6 months, but now I'm suddenly getting calls from recruitment consultants pretty much, you know, every other day, saying, can I go to York for 3 weeks starting tomorrow? You know, and the answer is, well, I'm afraid I can't. You know, lots of conveyancers are now taking their hollybobs, quite understandably, and you know, there aren't necessarily enough locums to fill the gaps. And of course, too, you know, and I know, there's you know, there's locums and there's locums. I have to say, I must tell you, one time the firm I was at, we were, you know, it was in a bit of chaos, I have to say, but we had this chap, we had this locum turn up to do some commercial property work, and because actually a partner had sort of left, you know, sort of overnight, really. It was all a bit of a kerfuffle. And this locum turned up sort of with his anorak done sort of right up to his neck. Do you know what I mean? He was one of those men with his anorak done right up to his neck. He'd probably got the zip mark just here. And so we sort of sat him down in the open plan office, but there were 2 doors. So there was the main door, but then there was a little sort of back door in this office. He sort of sat there for the morning and literally just, you know, moving bits of paper around the desk and not a lot else. We thought he'd gone for lunch, and by about 3 o'clock, we realised he wasn't sitting there. He'd literally been there for 3 hours. And we all looked round and said, well, what about Bob the locum? Where's Bob gone? And I looked at the chair and said, oh, God, his anorak's gone. And I went to see my friend on reception, and I said, Michelle, Bob the locum, has he left? You know, have we seen him leave? She said, oh, no. And we realised he'd just sort of buggered off out the back door. He'd just gone. He'd left. He lasted about 3 hours. It was absolutely grim. But so as I say, I mean, how do you find the sort of you know, the filling in the holiday gaps, Stu? How does that impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's very difficult. You know, people are entitled to their holidays. You know, I don't think that should be something that should affect the clients. I mean, within our practice, we have sort of in-house locums that fit in, you know, around people taking holiday. But it's holiday, it's people's illness as well. You know, I mean, we're lucky we haven't had anybody that's had the disease or anything like that. But you know, I'm sure there might be firms out there where, you know, that's happened, and it's how they then deal with that. So it's an incredibly difficult time for everybody, for obvious reasons. But yeah, no, locums, we've had some crazy ones in over the years, and yeah, let's just say some are better than others.
Yeah. I'll probably have a few people throwing things at the screen saying, yeah, we know what box you're in, Lorraine.
One of the crazy ones.
Yeah. Well, that's I think an interesting insight for people in some of the challenges that conveyancers are facing right now. So I'll love you and leave you for this Conveyancing Matters, and we'll no doubt chat about something else well, pretty soon, I would guess.
No problem. Take care.